Meccano part number 5. The most used Meccano part. After part number 37, of course. Hi. If you want even more Meccano goodness, why don't you check out my Patreon channel? And please like and subscribe and leave a comment below. I post updates in the community section, not only for this week's Patreon build, but also for what I'm currently working on. Thank you, and back to the build. Hi folks, and welcome back. As I said at the computer to start this script at the beginning of August of 2022, I must admit to a feeling of just not wanting to. It's partly just fatigue. After all, my average working week is 140 hours, a lot of it on call. But that sense of waiting is very tiring. And partly a case of just not having much in the way of mojo this week. But to gain energy, you have to spend energy. It's a weird thing, and part of depression, in my case caused by some rather unpleasant incidences that I've had to deal with in my working life. But giving in and not fighting is not part of my makeup. It just goes against the grain. And when you're knocked down, you get up. Even if you're going to get knocked back down again, you stand up, you keep going. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, if you can't run, you walk. When you can't walk, you crawl. But you just keep moving forward. And they are words that have inspired me in my darkest moments. Moments when the option to be here or not are a very real question. And one that my daughter has always provided the reason for choosing the answer that I have. But another part of the inspiration for me is what's been achieved by people in history. Now I know that I'm not going to be a great inventor, lauded through time for this or that, and for that I'm grateful, because today's heroes are tomorrow's villains. I'm quite happy to be unknown, just a nameless face in the crowd. But history is fascinating for what's been achieved by so many people. The nameless draftsman who drew the parts for Meccano, whose drawings are out there on the internet, the same parts that I'm using in these builds. I sat technical drawing as one of my options at school with a brilliant teacher who had the patience of Job with me. He would sit and show how tasks were done using set square and ruler, along with quotes like, "A blind man on a galloping horse could see that boy." Thank you, Mr. Parker. 34 years on, and you have still inspired in me an appreciation of the work that goes into engineering. Not long ago, I spent a number of years leading expeditions with young people into some quite wild terrain. And one of the things that I would drum into their heads, so to speak, is while looking at what you still have to do, look at what you've achieved, at how far you've walked and climbed. Because if you're ploughing forward thinking you've achieved nothing, then you are mistaken. It's a lesson I'm having to try to teach myself these days. And like a lot of the young people I've led into mountainous countryside, I don't listen either. But sometimes it's worth looking at the path you have walked. It might surprise you at what you have overcome and achieved. Because you are the first and will be the only person to ever climb that mountain. One of the real buzzes for me with writing these scripts is knowledge and the challenge that you get by learning new things. And with that, you also get a conflict of languages and terms. A stamping mill has two options. One is a machine that crushes rock into fine gravel, which can then be processed to get ore from. The other is used to press metalwork out of. I'm guessing that this model is a stamp press more than a stamp mill used for processing ore. Metal stamping is an ancient craft. The earliest examples date back to around 9,000 years ago, to the Lydanes. They were the first society to use a metal stamping process to mint their coins. In a process called striking, they would hit a die with a hammer, the force of which would emboss the pattern onto the coin. This method would be used for around 8,500 years until 1550. There are times when I write these scripts that they really connect with me on a personal level. I have some Roman coins in my collection, tiny little copper coins around 14 mil in diameter. Wafer thin bits of metal with both stamps of the coin stamped and not matching up in any way. They are around 2,000 years old. The fact that you get to touch and interact with real history leaves me in awe. And if ever you are sold Roman coins with WRL stamped on them as historic originals, you are being conned. They are reproductions by West Air Reproductions Limited, a company based in Birmingham in the UK. They sell to museums, and don't get me wrong, their reproductions are nice coins and well marked. I have some as example coins, but as the saying goes, buyer beware. In 1550, Max Schwab, a German inventor working in the minting industry, invented the first coin presses by using a screw press to apply equal pressure while striking a coin. This method would be used for nearly 200 years until 1830, when another German inventor, Diedrich Ullhorn, invented a new press by converting a toggle press, the lever action of which requires less force to strike a coin. This method has not changed that much in the last 200 years. There is nothing as wonderful as a fire engine. Of all the emergency services that try their best to make sure that we get home at the end of the day, our fire brigades seem to win the poll of who is the greater hero. In their large machines, heading to save lives and rescue people from dire situations, the crews turn heads. And to most children, of all ages, they are a source of awe and wonder. But when did it all start? When were the first firefighters and fire engines? The first team of people to fight fires dates back nearly 9,000 years to Cestrobus of Alexandria, who invented the compressed air pump. And his work is also mentioned by Heron of Alexandria as the first mention of a pump being used for a fire engine. And if you want any more information than that, I don't have it. And of course the Dark Ages happened, and we lost the work that had been done. It wasn't till 1650 that Hans Hautisch, a German inventor, built the first fire engine, which was witnessed in action in 1655. It took a team of 28 people to operate the pump, and then a crew of firefighters to operate the water hose. It had a range of 20 metres. For another 200 years, fire engines were drawn by horses, and in cities in many countries, houses had to have a bucket of water ready at the front of the premises for the bucket brigade, or first responders, to use to fight fires as they broke out. The first steam-powered fire engine was a British invention by John Braithwaite in 1829, and he demonstrated it to the London Fire Brigade. It lacked all ability in the field of fire engines, as it took 20 minutes to get up to steam and could only move around 1 gallon of water per minute. Yes, the huge volume of 8 pints, or 4 litres, roughly if you're using metric. To say that the London Fire Brigade wasn't all that impressed with it would be a classic case of British understatement, and an enraged mob of people finally ended up destroying the machine. In 1841 in New York, the first steam-powered, self-propelled fire engine was invented. What a wonderful sight it must have been, in its glossy red paint with black piping and gleaming brasswork. The new technology of harvesting steam was revolutionising the world, not too dissimilar to what happened in the latter part of the 20th century with technology. And a group of New York firefighters, maybe threatened by the new technology, sabotaged the machine. But moving on to 1852, Alexandra Latta has probably the distinction of being the person who invented the first practical steam-powered fire engine for the city of Cincinnati. The Uncle Joe Ross, as it was named, in honour of the councilman who'd promoted the fire engine, was a huge step forward in engine design from the earlier Braithwaite machine. It only took 4 minutes to get up to pressure instead of the earlier 20 minutes. It had enough power to spray water around 130 foot and was self-propelled, only requiring an additional 4 horses to help it move its rather extreme mass of 22,000 pounds or 11 tons. And that's before you add water to it. It was delivered in 1853 and manned by Cincinnati's newly commissioned paid fire department. It exploded in 1855 while being demonstrated at a trial. I wonder if they needed to get the fire department to put that fire out. Steam-powered fire engines carried on being used until around the late 1920s. But who was it that created the first petroleum-powered machine? Was it the Brits, leaders of engineering throughout the world, on the back of a fag packet while having a mug of tea and cucumber sandwiches? Or maybe the Germans, because when you need something over-engineered to save lives and simply be sehr good technique, they are the people to go to. Or the Americans. After all, the automobile is their baby. Nope, it was the French in 1897, or more to the point, the French police in Paris, who requested the first petrol-powered machine to be built. And for over 100 years, we've been watching internal combustion engines race to save our lives and those of our loved ones.